Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My guest this week is Jordan Banning, a financial strategist with a unique edge who transforms complex financial concepts into clear and actionable strategies for his clients. Now, Jordan is a CFP professional. He has over 15 years of experience in the financial services profession, and he has a really straightforward approach. He is committed to understanding his clients sincerely and then optimizing their financial success using strategic tax planning, investment management, and a whole host of other things. Jordan is the owner of Crafted Financial Planning, an RIA based out of Arizona, where he works with younger high earners in the tech space, like software developers and engineers in their 30s and 40s. And in this episode, Jordan is pulling back the curtain on the prospect process that he has built inside his firm with the help of myself and his wife, Ariel. Now, we talk about why he built this multi-step process before asking someone to become a client and why that multi-step process works for both him and the people he's trying to attract. We talk about what it looked like before he had it documented and the, dare I say, chaos that ensued, and what changed when he finally got it out of his head and into a system that he can repeat with every single person that comes through his pipeline now. And I will just say this, the before and after numbers are pretty remarkable. So you'll want to hear how much his close rate increased simply as a result of documenting his process and following it as closely as possible. So if you have ever spent way too long crafting the perfect follow-up email, or lost track of where a prospect stood in your pipeline, or wondered why your close rate isn't where you want it to be, this episode is probably going to hit home for you. Jordan's story is a really powerful and tangible reminder that a well-built, documented prospect process is not just an operational nice to have, but it's really a marketing and conversion tool that directly impacts your bottom line. So without further ado, let's dive in. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. I'm so pleased to have you here. How are you?
Excellent. Hi, Hillary. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
Excellent. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are, maybe your background, how you started your business, and what you do with your clients?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Jordan Banning. I own Crafted Financial Planning. We're an RIA based out of Arizona. I work and serve primarily with younger high earners in their 30s and 40s, specifically in the tech side. So I work with a lot of like software developers and engineer types. My career spans, going on 16 years now. Background started in banking on the accounting side, just kind of work through various financial industries, and then became a financial planner in 2020 and fell in love. It was basically the culmination of everything that I love doing, and it was basically the perfect job. So I kind of continued that path, and then I launched my own RIA a little over 2 years ago now.
Yeah, and I mean, your growth has been really fun to watch. Obviously, we just, reconnected actually, maybe almost a year ago at this point. So I know a lot has changed since then. So I would love to talk to you specifically about your prospecting process and what it looks like for you to take someone who comes in for a discovery call all the way through to becoming a client. And I think this will be so interesting for advisors to listen to, because I've talked to some advisors where they just have one discovery call with a client or a potential client, and then they ask that person to become a client. And then I've talked to other advisors who know that, no, for the types of clients that I'm trying to work with, it takes longer than that. And so they have maybe multiple meetings before asking someone to become a client. And so I know that is the case for you. Can you give us just a little bit of an overview of what your process looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like right now our process is, somebody will schedule an introductory call. So we'll have, 15 to 30-minute intro call, just getting to know one another, understanding kind of the nature of what they're looking for, and then just fit check, making sure that we like each other and want to move forward. Next stage from that, I actually do 2 collaboration meetings. So that might be a little unusual for the industry before formally engaging with somebody, but I feel it helps frame and kind of create the relationship and test the waters in that space. So my first meeting is a purely qualitative. We just go through and really understanding who the person is, who the client, what their values are, what their goals are, what their priorities are, what life is like, and what trajectory that they're on, and just helping to like kind of clarify and confirm who they are as a person, what they're really wanting to accomplish. The meeting after that is where we actually back in with kind of the financial details. And so we'll kind of create a roadmap of their financial, that's where I'll actually get statements, for all the accounts. We'll build everything out, get copies of tax returns and, all of the kind of financial quantitative aspects of that person. Once you know, after that point, I have a full vision of who this client, what their needs are, what that relationship looks like, and so from that point, I build out a formal proposal. I create a nice document that summarizes exactly what their financial priorities are, make sure that I heard them correctly, and actually target kind of those important key points that they're looking to solve for. And then I speak through and clarify the scope of engagement. What are we actually be working on together? What are the deliverables and kind of the cadence of that engagement? Just make it very clear for them. And then obviously pricing and how they, if they choose to move forward, what the costs involved would be to move forward in that engagement. And then I pair with that a short 3 or 4 minute Loom video, just me just kind of walking through, clarifying and summarizing it in a way where it's not just sending them a big document for them to read through. And then after that, that's if they choose to move forward, we sign a client agreement and get paid, and then I start building out a full financial plan, and we kind of go from there of kicking off like the actual onboarding.
So that's quite a process. That's 3 meetings and then a proposal. So there's really like 4 steps here,
Yeah.
I feel like. So what do you think, like, what's the value of having this process that may be a little bit longer as opposed to some other processes that I've seen? What do you see to be like the real value here?
Yeah, and I'll start off just by saying I think that this is, you know, you have to kind of identify your process based on not only your needs but your client's needs, who
Mhm.
you're working with, and and then yourself, and being kind of introspective. And for me,
Mhm.
like the kind of one meeting and looking for engagement prior to like moving into those other steps, it was challenging for me to be able to really speak to the value of what we'll be working together and accomplishing, because I didn't really know that person yet.
Right.
So I'd rather take a little more time on the front end, really get to know who they are, and be able to like very clearly spell out how we're going to serve and solve for them, which turns out to have a, a higher conversion rate. I work with most people that I go through this process with. So
Right, right. What do you think, like if you could talk me through, have there been like challenges or downsides to this process that you've had to work through and solve for?
yeah, I mean, the biggest challenges in the beginning was how trying to decide like how much information to gather, how much
Mhm.
homework to put on somebody, how to make how much friction there may be. And so that's really kind of why it ended up turning into a multi-step process, is because it made it, instead of it being like a large intake form where I found myself with just the types of clients that I work with, sending that off and then never really hearing back from them, or pushing and prodding, and it was kind of challenging to move into those next steps. So for me, it was really trying to solve for making meeting them where they're at, and making it you know uh, easy to them, reducing the friction and the barriers for them to be able to share and provide me with what I need.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially for this like third meeting or the second collaboration meeting where you're looking at the financials and you have statements in front of you. Like I've heard from advisors, it's hard enough to get like someone who's already paying them to send them all the documents they need. I can imagine it's hard to get someone who's like still you're still getting to know each other, like getting them to go find and gather all of that stuff and send it to you. Do you feel like is am I right in that thought?
Yeah, and that was challenging too. And so it's like, how do you get to the point to like, reach out and ask for their business if you can't even get them to like share and open up and give information there? So if
Mm.
that's kind of the other reason as well why I go in the path that I do. I start with more of the softer relation, understanding who they are and what they're trying to accomplish, because I
Mhm.
feel like that gives them a platform to really tell their story and
Right.
really define what it is that they're looking to do and to clarify that. And it also reaffirms the importance of financial planning from the
Mhm.
get-go, and then we're just backing into solving for it. So
Yeah.
it's easier for that ask. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to need this information to understand and help you along this journey. So here's the next step. And it's, I rarely get any pushback at all on the documentation side of things.
Did you think you were going to, when you first started?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did, because I feel like the may have been a me issue, not being able to in those initial meetings build that immediate connection and build that immediate trust, and I'm sure that that may have something to do with it. So, but like anything, you kind of adapt and adopt and figure out what works for you and also what works for who you're typically engaging with.
Right. Well, the other thing that's coming to mind for me here is with all of these meetings, not only do you have multiple meetings, but there's things that kind of have to, there's like work that happens in between the meetings as well when you're communicating with the prospects who are going through the process and you're maybe needing to follow up with them. Talk to me about what that's been like.
Yeah. And are we talking about the current process that we've put in place?
Take me back to before we had the documented process.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be like look back to like a year ago. So like March 2025.
Hmm. Yeah. So that process in between, I would go through. I would meet with somebody, and then after the fact, I might want to reach out and send like a follow up email, for example, or a text or some outreach, and I would find myself going crazy, just trying to create the perfect email. I always had this, kind of OCD obsession with my communications that go out to somebody, especially if it's like earlier on in a relationship and you really want to demonstrate that value. And how logical or how rational it was, it didn't matter. I always ended up spending way, way too long just crafting the perfect response that somebody may look at a cursory glance and click a
Yeah.
link or whatever, right? Uh,
I want to say I really relate to you here. I feel like for us as like service providers, it's high stakes. It's like I want this person to become a client. If I don't use exactly the right words, they're gonna not become a client, right? Is that the kind of pressure that you were feeling?
yeah, and especially if I've connected with them and I feel like there's real value to be delivered, I
Yeah.
feel like the onus is on me to properly communicate that value proposition for
Hmm.
their best interest too. Like it's not always just about me. Like I feel like it's my job to make sure that you understand like really what we can do and what we're solving for. And if I don't present that correctly and it doesn't create that aha or that excitement, I've not met my the mark
Yeah.
appropriately for you.
Yeah.
And so for me it's very personal, that we correctly communicate those things to keep them engaged and keep them wanting to move forward and have that vision of the process.
Right. So not only are there like lots of follow-ups and outreach things to do in between meetings, I mean, and as depending on how many prospects you have coming through, that's a lot to keep track of as well. But you're also worried about like in each one of those communications, are you saying exactly the right words? So this is about the time when you and Ariel came to me, and we really started to map out this process and like write, the follow-up templates, so you at least had the bones and then you could fill in with specific things. So talk to me about what's changed since then.
It's so much nicer now. It's so much nicer now. And it's not, there's, yes, there's templates and but it's there for structure. It's not there, as this, just this copy paste go. Like it
Yeah.
still allows there to be flexibility where it needs to be, but
Hmm.
there's a framework now and a clear kind of pathway for the outcomes that happen throughout that prospect process. So
Right.
it's so much nicer because I know, like, no matter where somebody's at, I can take a template, update the key core items that I need to in there, and send it off. And what was taking me, I'm not even going to tell you how long it was taking me,
You
but
have
now I
to.
can get that done in 5-10 minutes.
Are we talking like an hour or like up from
uh
that?
you more.
Okay. More.
I'm,
There's
I'm,
no
I'm
shame.
telling you, when I say OCD, I mean that, like, clinically, not.
Yeah. Well, another question that I kind of forgot to ask you was, because obviously when you talk about OCD, like you're very meticulous about the things that you do. I term that for myself like perfectionism. Like I'm quite a perfectionist. And then I sometimes feel like that gets in the way of me actually like doing the things that are the most important part. So the question that I'm going to ask you is coming from that lens. Do you feel like you were able to stay on top of all of the follow-ups, or were those like sometimes not happening and then weeks would go by and then you would remember like, oh my gosh, I have to follow up with this person?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the reason that we reached out to you, is because
Mhm.
as things started to scale, that process wasn't scalable,
Mm.
and then there'd end up where there'd be a message 85% written sitting in the drafts that didn't get sent off,
Right.
and those gaps. And I think realizing, like, if for me that's unacceptable, is to have gaps in communication. Those are like the basics that need to be jammed out, right? So I think that's where that was the catalyst of, like, hey, we need to uh, reach out, create some framework, create some really, yeah, create the framework and create just stable processes that are already in place that we can follow, and then help us keep us accountable, build them into our systems, build out automations where we can, so
Right.
that way we can spend less of our brain thinking about, what's the right next step, what to do next, how to craft it specifically for this person, and take all that, just rely on the system to help us navigate, so we can kind of keep focused on really the important items, and maintaining
Mm.
that relationship and maintaining the focus on what's really important for them.
Right. It sounds like it really like reduces the mental load.
Yeah, yeah. It feels kind of like putting up bumpers in bowling, right? Where it's,
Mm.
there's protections in place, and you don't have to think about all of the things that could create the gutter ball. And you might not always roll a strike, but you can roll a lot more confidently, knowing that you're gonna hit something, you're gonna move it forward, and there's gonna be progress.
You're gonna hit some pins at least. Have you guys implemented it into systems, like into, I know that you use Wealthbox as your CRM. Has that happened where you're getting like automated task reminders when someone comes in? Or do you have something else that you're doing to just keep a tab on where is this person in the process? When should I follow up with them?
Yeah, so we use Wealthbox. We also use Zapier and Calendly. I think those are like the main um, platforms that are kind of part of this process here. And so, like, when somebody will register for, they'll sign up for their intro call, that kicks off a Zap in Zapier that automatically will add their profile in Wealthbox, and it kicks off the kind of all those next steps. And then, as we go through those meetings, as we finish those meetings, those templates are already in place. And now Wealthbox even has like an AI capability to it. And so we've
Mm.
been able to take those email templates, put that structure into Wealthbox for different, like, creating different email templates for the different stages, and then
Mm.
you can put like brackets where it's like where you want AI defined. It'll actually extract from the meeting and add those spots for you, and then I could just review prior tweak a couple things and send it off. So that's even made life infinitely easier having
That's
that in
amazing.
place too. So it's kind of a combination of both of those things. And yeah, the less time that I have to worry about those items, the more that I'm able to focus on like the more important aspects of the business.
I imagine that has to be good for mental health too. Of like, now you're not like spiraling, wondering if I've said just the right things, but it's like, okay, it's sent, it's done. Like the next step is going to happen, whatever it is.
Yeah, that, and I think the more important piece for me was knowing, having a clear, having the clarity around like the stage of where they're at,
Mhm.
because this even goes beyond, just simple have the meeting, here's the follow up.
Mhm.
Let's say a few days pass and there hasn't been a response, or they haven't scheduled the next meeting, or whatever may have transpired. There's a follow up. Maybe it's a follow up text. It's just a simple, hey, here's, if you haven't had the chance, here's the link kind of a thing. If there's still no response, then there's, another phase of that too, where there's like an email or a call. And then there's a point where if there's still no, you built out a full drip sequence campaign where we move them out of that and into the drip sequence, and it's all already built and in place. So there's like a clear what will happen whether we continue moving forward and engaging, but also there's enough like framework in place where if they don't, things don't go the way that you intend, or there isn't a response. And let's face it, clients are not, prospects or clients, they're not always the most responsive. They can have a great conversation and then life happens again, and they just,
Right.
so it's a good way to keep them engaged and through the process. So that to me has been the 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 biggest relief, is just knowing, exactly where they're at and knowing what type of communication is going to be best for where they're at.
Right. Right. Well, Ariel, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. We can take it out if you do. But Ariel showed me she had done a comparison of last year's. She put everything in a spreadsheet of like all of the calls that you had last year.
Yeah.
And from January to June, before you had this process, and then comparing from July to December. And what she found was that your close rate more than doubled from July to December. Were you surprised to see that, or were you not surprised?
I mean, it was surprising to see that, but it does make sense. Like in hindsight, it makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, at the time, it's like, whoa, like I think it just demonstrates, the proof of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I was really, like, really excited to see that. Like, that's really tangible because your close rate from January to June, I mean, it wasn't a bad close rate by any means. Like, it was a good close rate for this
Mhm.
industry. But then to
Yeah.
see it double to, like, I hope you don't mind me saying, but like it was like over 60%. Like that's really high close rate. So I was very pleased for you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think that too, it speaks to like, I guess, reflect. I'm really introspective, and I try to always think about like the why behind why something might work. And I think when I see that, what that tells me is like, when you have just clarity around your process and what's next and all of that, the more clarity you have in that, the more you can, like, confidently you can communicate that. And
Right.
any prospect, like, they feel that confidence, they feel that structure, and that resonates. So I think by having that, it just created an environment that was very purposeful and intentional, and the results obviously speak for themselves.
I want to circle back to that really quick because I think it's so important. It's like before you had it mapped out, you knew the process in your head. You knew there were three meetings and then a proposal, right? But
Yeah.
then having a visual of it, even if you don't show that to prospects, which you probably could create like a cool visual to show them, but even just you having the visual of the map that we built in the Google Doc, I'm sure it made it so much easier to then just explain and talk about to prospects. So I love that you brought that up. One final question for you. Have there been any challenges or obstacles that have come up since implementing this process that and I guess I'm going to ask this in a better way, that you have solved for since then, or
Mm,
that this is the next thing I need to solve for or work on to make this even better?
yeah, and I think that was like probably the main thing that created my problem in the first place
Mm.
is that I would have like my process in my head or solve for or whatever, but because I'm constantly one, I was still like in infancy with my business, and I didn't want to just copy and paste what I had done it prior my prior firms. I really
Mhm.
wanted it to be make sense for me, make sense for the types of client that I work with. And so with that comes this constant phase of iteration
Right.
where it's always trying to refine and improve and make things and then I felt like it was reinventing the wheel every time I would do it. So I would say like the challenge was for me not to want to continue trying to
Oh.
refine and improve and just trusting the framework that was put in place. So that has been helpful. Now I will say that there are some things, the changes that we are wanting to make or the challenges is it's easier to identify some of
Mm.
those when you're not constantly changing it all the time, but you actually
Right.
have something stable to rely and refer to, then then you actually have like a better base for making those changes. So yes, I'll say like some of the changes, like you had mentioned earlier, is like right now we're working on creating a visual around
Mm.
that we can embed in like our email correspondence, where it'll show exactly like what stage, like just clearly map out kind of the stages of the initial prospect process, and then just very clearly so that person can. Some people are visual and they don't want to read wall of text or whatever, so they
Right.
can just quickly see, okay, I'm at this part. Here's kind of the cliff notes of what to expect in the next meeting, for example.
Right. Yeah, I really love that notion of having a visual of like kind of a little tracker bar. Like this is your financial planning practice is much more sophisticated than this, so I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but it's reminding me of like the Domino's tracker a little bit of
Yeah,
like your
no,
pizza's
that's
in the oven,
exactly.
like yeah, and it's like you are at collab meeting number 1 and next is collab number 2, like just being able to see where you're at in the process and
Yeah,
see
we're putting the toppings on the financial plan right now, and it's about to go in the oven.
you may need a rebrand here, Jordan.
I like it. Now I'm hungry.
Yeah. Well, this has been really great, Jordan, just to hear from your perspective of what it was like before and what it's been like after. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with me and my listeners. Is there anything that I haven't asked yet that you think, you would have loved to share, or do you feel like we covered it?
I think all I'll say is what I'd like to share is just anybody who who's listening who's like has ownership over their process and over how they interact. And this doesn't just have to be the prospect process. This can be anywhere. Is like if you don't already have it clearly documented in a system, there's a gap. And you can be as organized in your head and have everything and have that cadence as much as you want, but until it's actually, you know, built into infrastructure, it's it's just night and day difference. And now I'll add on to this that we've recently hired on a couple CSAs who are helping us out now. And now that this is all documented in the system, it's so much easier as we start to scale and bring on employees under the business for them to be able to refer to those. And now they can handle a lot of those steps. And the training aspect of it is has been fairly easy.
Mhm.
It's really clear just to look and for them to have something that they can refer to. So just having something built in place is excellent.
Yeah. And I love too, you said just having it clearly documented in a system. Like, I just want to explain what that looks like tactically. Like when we're talking about the initial system, we're talking about like in a Google Doc, like nothing super fancy, right? Just like writing it all out and having the whole thing from start to finish mapped in a Google Doc that you can then take. And then we built a whole library of communications and templates. And then you can build those into what you said, your infrastructure, which for you is Wealthbox, Zapier, and Calendly for the most part. And it truly is. that simple. I think sometimes when people hear like, I have to get this written down in a system, they're like, do I have to pay for new tech? Like, what's that going to be? Like a Word doc is
Yeah.
good enough.
And it seems, yeah, I think that's a great point. Is like, I think if we would have just, if you would have shown me like what we have right now, and that's where we were starting, like it'd be way overwhelming. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know, but I think it was, again, because it started so simple. Of like, here's what we're trying to accomplish. You know,
Mm-hmm.
here's kind of the steps that are involved, and then it's just going through what already happens in our day to day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking back at like what correspondence are we already doing,
Yep.
what of that can we extract and keep, and what of that is like just noise, and it's cutting out a lot of the noise and just keeping the good stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
building it into a clear structure. So it's, yeah, and then from that you just, it's easy to add on and build from that, but you need structure to start to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jordan, this has been so fun. If people want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn/Jordan Banning or craftedplanning.com.
Cool. Well, I will link to those in the show notes in case people want to connect with you. And thank you so much, Jordan. This has been great.
Oh, thank you, Hillary. I really appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.